he done so and so. Allah did not create you for this. Allah says in the Quran, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. Do you think that we had created you with play and that you would not be brought back to us? O people of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and mankind only so that they may worship me. Now the problem with the human, how many times have we heard this? How many times do we hear this verse? You read it in books, you hear it at the Jum'ah prayer, and more than likely in every single Jum'ah it will be mentioned somewhere in the world. And we hear these verses over and over, but who actually ponders over this verse? How many Muslims really understand this verse? Wallahi, if every Muslim understood, none of us would be sinners. None of us would sin. But unfortunately we all sin. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I ask you all a question. Do you, Abdullah, understand this verse? Look within your heart. Do you understand when Allah tells you, I created you only to worship me, meaning Allah? Do you understand? Or there's some weakness in your heart? There's some weakness in your actions. You don't physically or mentally understand what Allah is telling you. They're plain words. You don't need a scholar to explain to you. We know there's certain people that say, no, we can't understand unless we have a scholar in front of us. These words are simple. They're easy for us to understand. Imagine, O slave of Allah, and I call everyone, and I call myself a slave of Allah if we're true Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ used to call himself a messenger and a slave of Allah. So hold your head up high when you're called a slave of Allah. Yes, we are slaves of Allah. The Prophet, imagine you were called a slave of the dollar. And how many Muslims are actually slaves of the dollar? How many people or men are slaves of the women? And how many women are slaves of the men? And how many of us are actually slaves of our own desires? We just do what we want to do. We do as we act. We don't care about anyone. We're not worried what anyone thinks. Imagine you were called the slave of the dunya. O Abdullah, O slave of Allah, Allah has created you to worship Him and none else. And know on the day of judgment, if your heart is attached to something else, it will come on the day of judgment and then you'll be asked. Whatever you followed in this life will be asked. Or you let this thing benefit you now. Let this dollar, let this car, let this house benefit you now. And you and that idol will be chucked in the hellfire. Allah save us from the torment of the hellfire. Don't be fooled by this dunya. Don't be fooled by shaitan. The shaitan, he has many years of experience, and this is something we think we don't understand. The shaitan has been there before Adam alayhi salam. He's had many years, much experience. And remember, he fooled our father. He's the one that kept whispering into Adam's head alayhi salam until he was kicked out of the heavens. Be on guard. You know when you learn martial arts or boxing, they tell you keep your hands up. You have to keep your guard up. Once you slip, he pounces on you. And this is reality. Don't let him whisper to you and say that you are almighty. Don't let him whisper to you and say that you are supreme. Don't let him whisper to you and say that you have the authority in this life. Let me tell you about a man who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him authority. His name is Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah had given this man, this prophet, the best of all creations, the authority. Once Umar radiallahu anhu, he went into the house of the Prophet ﷺ and he noticed something. He noticed the house of the Prophet ﷺ. First he said the Prophet ﷺ only had a sheet around his lower waist, on the bottom of him. He didn't have a garment on top. Then he looked around in the house. He said, I saw a bed, a pillow, some barley, a few pots with water in it. Then tears came to the Umar's eyes. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, "O Umar, what are you crying for? What makes you cry? What makes tears go down your face?" He said, "Ya Rasulullah, the kings of Persia and Rome, they live in luxury. And you are the chosen one. You are the Prophet of Allah, and you live like this." What did the Prophet ﷺ do? What did he say? Did he say, "You're right, Umar, go get me a palace, give me all the gold, give me the best of food"? He didn't say this. He said, "O Ibn al-Khattab, are you not pleased that they choose this world and we choose the hereafter?" Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. How many of us choose this world or the hereafter? Remember, the best of creation, and he could have had whatever he wanted in this life. The Prophet ﷺ sometimes used to be that hungry that he used to tie a rock to his waist. Out of the hunger, he used to tie it really hard so that feeling would go. Do we do this? How many people here actually even just fast Mondays and Thursdays? How many people do this sunnah? When Ramadan comes, what happens? We go, "Man, what's happening? I can't believe it's here already. I have to fast. I have to fast while I work. How do I do it? Oh Allah, please make it easy for us. Please let it go quick for us." This is how we think. How lost are we, O people of Islam? Look at us and look at the Prophet ﷺ. It is like we are not even his followers. The companions one day came up to him and they wanted to make a nice, comfortable mattress for the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ said, after refusing, he said, "What have I to do with worldly things? My connection to this world is like a traveller. I rest under the shade of a tree and then I move on." Then he moves on. So this life is just a test. It's like you go to the bus stop and you sit under the shade, you're waiting for the bus to come. Or you go to the train station. You're getting ready to move on. And why do Muslims feel pleasure when they disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You see it. You hear the Muslims giggle and brag whenever they disobey Allah. O people of piety, do you feel pleasure in your heart when you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you go deal in interest? Allah has made this haram. But our excuse these days is what? How do we live in a country like this and we don't own a house? The brothers and sisters that have been paying rent for how many years are surviving. So what makes you different? Do you have tawakkul in Allah properly? Or do you have greed in your heart that you just want a piece of the dunya? This is what you have to ask. Do you feel pleasure in your heart when you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you eat the flesh of your dead brother when you backbite him and when you slander him? And you feel jealousy in your heart that you want every single thing of that other person. Do you feel happiness? Why do we compete in haram? Why do we compete in haram? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, سَابِقُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا كَعَرْضِ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ أُعِدَّتْ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ ذُو الْفَضْلِ الْعَظِيمِ. Race one another in hastening towards forgiveness from your Lord. Don't hasten with one another in haram, in sins. Run to your Lord. And paradise is the width of the heavens and the earth. Allahu Akbar. Do you want this piece of land? 500, 600, 700, if you're lucky, 1,000 square meters. When paradise is the width of the heavens and the earth. Prepared for those who believe in Allah and His Messenger. That is the grace of Allah which He bestows on whom He pleases. And Allah is the owner of all bounties. O Muslims, why do we choose jobs? And this is very important. To live your life